Before the mountains were born, or you brought forth the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. You turn men back to dust, saying, return to dust, O sons of men. For 1,000 years in your sight are like a day that has just gone by, or like a watch in the night. You sweep men away in the sleep of death. They are like the new grass of the morning. Though in the morning it springs up new, by evening it is dry and withered. Now, I said that my title was The Gift of the Present Moment, but the psalmist here is meditating on generations, on the time before man was created, before the mountains were born, or before the earth was brought forth. From everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Is it possible that the God who created the world, the one who is from everlasting to everlasting, is interested in, let alone in charge of, every single moment of every hour, of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year, of the life of every woman in this room? My answer is yes. Most emphatically, yes. God is interested, and much more than interested, he is totally in charge of the present moment. God has no past and no future. We probably spend a lot of time worrying about the future. And of course, when we do that, it's disobedience, isn't it? Because God has told us, don't worry about anything whatever. That's from Philippians 4. And in Matthew, Jesus said, take no thought for tomorrow, for the morrow will take thought for the things of itself. And so when we worry about the future, we are being disobedient to God. That's the worst thing. We are deflecting our energies from doing the will of God and squandering them on worry. And it's not only disobedience and a useless squandering of energies, but it is utterly ineffective, isn't it? Can you remember what you were worrying about last Wednesday? Well, I suppose some of you were worrying about whether you were going to make it to this lunch today. But I doubt that most of you can remember exactly what it was you were worried about last week. And if you can remember what it was, my question is, did it do you any good? Exactly what did it accomplish that was helpful? You and I know that it accomplishes absolutely nothing whatsoever. And as I look over this audience, I can see that there are quite a few of you whose hair is pretty much like mine, gray or graying or white. I can't help envying you who have white hair. I keep hoping that maybe mine will turn that beautiful color. But it's a great temptation for us old folks to worry about what's going to happen between now and when we die. I don't suppose that many of us really worry a whole lot about death. If we're Christians, we know that it's going to be, as the poem says, just think of stepping on shore and finding it heaven, of taking hold of a hand and finding it God's, of breathing new air and finding it celestial, of waking up in glory and finding it home. That's just thrilling to me, absolutely thrilling. But it's not thrilling to think of the divestiture of our powers. I'm losing my memory. I'm losing my hair. I'm losing my teeth. I'm losing my brains. Who knows whether I'm going to be able to stand up here a week from now or not. And Lars says when I get to the point where I can't think anymore, he will simply prop me up in front of the microphone and he will turn on a tape and I will have to lip sync. Well, I think it takes a certain amount of brains to lip sync too, but you understand what I'm saying, don't you? We don't like the possibilities of all that might happen between now and death. And of course, Jesus might come this afternoon. So all of that would have been worth absolutely nothing. And it isn't any of our business what's going to happen tomorrow. God is already there. God is in the past, God is in the future, and God wants us to trust him for the present moment. This is where we are now. And this is where he wants to reveal himself to us. If we trust him and learn day by day to dwell in God so that he is literally our dwelling place, this is where I live and move and have my being, as Paul said, then we're not going to be tempted to waste our powers in worry. But we will be full of hope and courage, and the Lord will give us strength. George MacDonald has said that God is always giving us good as fast as he can get us to take it. God is always giving us good as fast as he can get us to take it. And an awful lot of the time, we are so distracted by our own little teeny tiny petty concerns, by our plans and our own purposes and our agenda, not to mention our worries, that God can't get us to take the good which he has put in the present moment. It's now that he wants us to trust him. It is here, in the midst of this situation, in the midst of the heartbreak, in the midst of your husband losing a job, in the midst of, you name it, whatever the thing is that may concern you right now, the thing which doesn't seem as though there's any possible way that you could consider it a gift. Lord, you have been our dwelling place. And if the Lord has not been your dwelling place, I would suggest that today you begin praying that he will teach you to live in that place of peace and calm and quietness, the kind of peace that the world knows nothing about and can never give. It was the last gift that Jesus promised to his disciples. He said, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give unto you, not as the world giveth." What kind of peace does the world know anything about? Usually, the world's idea of peace is some kind of a quiet, remote place, maybe a tropical island with pink sand and palm trees. Some place where you can break out, zone out, chill out. I don't know what it is, but my nephew would be telling me I'm supposed to be saying today. He's always correcting my slang. Last time he heard me say chill out, he says, "Oh, we don't chill out anymore, we zone out." Well, whatever you do, that's probably the best that the world can come up with when it comes to peace, just kind of a place that's physically isolated and quiet. But Jesus promises a kind of peace that can be had any place, anywhere, anytime, in the midst of any situation. And I can remember times in my life which, humanly speaking, would have been the last place that I could have imagined having peace. I suppose for most widows, it's very difficult when you wake up in the morning for those first few weeks and you realize that that man isn't there anymore. He's just not there and he's not coming back. And yet I can remember times of almost exaltation with the realization that my husband was with the Lord and that he would never have to suffer again. And I was given a kind of inexplicable joy and peace, even in the midst of that. But it comes because God is my refuge, and God is my dwelling place. That is where I live, and that is where I want to continue to live, God helping me. On the day that I left for Ecuador, it was April the 5th, 1952. As those of you who have read my book on the shaping of a Christian family, which tells about the home in which I grew up, you know that every morning after breakfast, my father herded all of us into the living room, and we sang a hymn. And then my father read the Bible, and we all got down on our knees, and he prayed for us. We went straight through a hymn book, so we weren't skipping around. We never skipped the stanzas, and my father didn't ask for favorites very often. It was a very rare occasion. But on that particular morning, in 1952, he said, "Well, since you're leaving today, Betsy," he always called me Betsy, "you may choose the hymn." And so the hymn that I chose was, "I take thy promise, Lord, in all its length and breadth and fullness as my daily strength. Into life's future, fearless, I may gaze, for Jesus, thou art with me all the days." And of course, in 1952, I had no idea what the future was going to hold. Let's think now, point number 2, if any of you are trying to take notes, I'll try to make it as easy as I can for you. Number 1 was our dwelling place. And now, number 2, the dark days. I continue to read from Psalm 50. I read verses 1 to 6. Now this is verses 7 to 13. Rather a different mood. "We are consumed by your anger," says the psalmist, "and terrified by your indignation. You have set our iniquities before you, our secret sins, in the light of your presence. Pretty scary, isn't it? All our days pass away under your wrath. We finish our years with a moan. The length of our days is 70 years, or 80. And let's not forget that. In 13 more months, I'm going to reach that biblical quotient. It thrills me to think that a normal lifespan, according to the Bible, is 70 years, or 80 if we have the strength, he says here. Yet their span is but trouble and sorrow, for they quickly pass and we fly away. Who knows the power of your anger? For your wrath is as great as the fear that is due you. Teach us to number our days aright, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Relent, O Lord. How long will it be? Have compassion on your servants. That's sort of a wail, isn't it? The psalmist is just suddenly very pessimistic and moaning and groaning and fearful. Dark days have come upon him, or he is casting his memory back to some very dark days. And Jesus made it very plain that if we were going to live in this world and follow him, we were going to have tribulation. In the world, he said, you will have tribulation. But be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. And when we ask that three-letter word constantly of God, why? Why do you let this happen? Why would you let this happen to her? She's such a good person. Or, Lord, what have I done to deserve this? Why do I have to go through this? Jesus says to us, I think very gently, what else is new? What did I tell you to expect? Tribulation. Nothing new about that. Every single one of us has got to have our share. And in Psalm 16:5, the psalmist says, Lord, you have assigned me my portion and my cup, and have made my lot secure. That is one of the most powerful anchors of my soul. The realization that every single thing that God puts on my platter is an assigned, precisely measured portion. You have assigned me my portion and my cup and have made my lot secure. My lot doesn't look secure necessarily, but if I believe that God is my dwelling place, if God is truly my refuge, there is no safer place in the world. There is no safe place in the world except the will of God, right? Sometimes young parents come to me who wish to go to the mission field, but they're scared to death of taking their children. And they want to know, how in the world did you ever take your little daughter in to live with those savage Indians, etc., etc.? And my question to them is, do you know a safe place in this world? Where would you say is a safe place? I know one, God, who is my dwelling place. And the only safe place in the world is the will of God. If it's God's will for you to be a missionary, then it's God's will for you to take your children to the mission field. And that settles it. That certainly ought to settle it. Well, another stanza in that hymn that we sang that morning in 1952 says, there will be days of darkness and distress when sin has power to tempt and care to press. Yet in the darkest day I will not fear, for Jesus, for in the shadows thou wilt still be near. In the darkest day I will not fear, for in the shadows thou wilt still be near. You can count on it. Whatever is your worst fear, you can count on it. If it comes to pass, Jesus will be there. And he will be there with an abundant supply of all the grace you need to respond as a faithful Christian should respond in that situation. And I'm sure there are many here today in whose lives the worst thing they could ever imagine happened. But you're here today, aren't you? And you have received the grace of God. The dark days. As one writer said, one who dwells on his troubles instead of in God loses all sense of the joys that God gives him, because he chooses to sit down on his little handful of thorns. Are you choosing to sit down on your little handful of thorns? It's going to happen, isn't it? If you choose to look at your troubles instead of to God. In 2 Corinthians 4, verses 17 and 18, Paul says, these little troubles, which are really so transitory. Now let's pause right there and think of what some of Paul's little troubles were. He was starved. He was shipwrecked. He was led over a wall in a basket. He was imprisoned. He was flogged, 39 stripes, I've forgotten how many times. And here it is, Paul, the apostle, who'd gone through all those agonies, saying, these little troubles, which are really so transitory, what are they doing? They are working for us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory, while we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are unseen. For the things which are seen are temporal, and the things which are unseen are eternal. The gift of the present moment. It may be the moment in which you learn that your husband doesn't love you anymore. And I cannot think of anything more horrible and traumatic than that. And just this weekend, we were entertained in a very beautiful home by a very beautiful lady who had been married very happily, had 2 children, and she had put her husband through med school. And a few weeks ago, he said, I don't love you anymore. I'm out of here. And he has a girlfriend, not surprisingly. But he actually said to his wife, she's nobody I expect to spend the rest of my life with. Stunning moment. Did it take God by surprise? No. Was God preparing that woman in ways that she never imagined? Yes. Although she didn't realize it, of course, at the moment. It just seems as though everything falls down around us, doesn't it? As the psalmist says in Psalm 46, God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Have you ever felt as though he was really a very absent help? I have. That's the way we feel. But this is the unchangeable word of God. You have to go by what he says, not by what we feel. Big difference there, isn't there? Though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake. And there are those stunning moments when it feels as though the mountains have been carried into the midst of the sea. Everything that you depended on suddenly evaporated and gone. All dependability gone, no rational explanation. And that stunner, I'm leaving. I have no doubt that there are quite a few of you who've been through that. Seems to be the fashion nowadays. Now that is a terrible moment. What happens in the next moment? Probably the thought, what am I going to do? I'm abandoned. How am I going to support these children? Where's he going? Panic, fear, as when the disciples were in the storm on the boat and Jesus was asleep on the pillow. They thought they were perishing, but they were just panicking. And they shook him awake and they said, Master, don't you care that we're perishing? And he said, where is your faith? Why is it that you have no faith? And he spoke to the wind and the waves and they calmed down. The dark days are gifts. And now I know that your head is spinning. You think, how in the world can she stand up there and say that what happened to me was a gift? It's not an easy lesson. It's not something that I speak of glibly. But I can look back over my life, over the worst things that happened, and I can say with Thomas Browne of the 17th century, when I survey the occurrences of my life and call into account the finger of God, I can perceive nothing but an abyss and mass of mercies. Those which others term crosses, misfortunes, to me who inquire farther into them than their visible effects have ever proved the secret dissembled favors of his affections. I see my whole history as the grace of God, sustaining me, correcting me, loving me, leading me, guiding me, providing me with the grace that I needed. There's a third stanza in that hymn that I mentioned. Days there may be of joy and deep delight, when earth seems fairest and her skies most bright. Then draw me closer to thee, lest I rest, my Savior, elsewhere than upon thy breast. And so now the third thing, the gladness that comes, and the psalmist found this gladness before he finished writing Psalm 90. He says, Satisfy us in the morning with your unfailing love, that we may sing for joy and be glad all our days. Make us glad for as many days as you have afflicted us, for as many years as we have seen trouble. May your deeds be shown to your servants, your splendor to their children. May the favor of the Lord our God rest upon us. Establish the work of our hands for us. Yes, establish the work of our hands. The God of the generations, the God who is everlasting, the God for whom 1,000 years are as one day, is the God who gives us what each moment holds, and gives it out of his love and his wisdom, in order that he might reveal himself to us in this present moment. Not something that happened yesterday, not something that might happen tomorrow. He wants to reveal us to himself now, so that we learn day by day to dwell in God, so that he becomes quite literally our dwelling place. You know that lovely hymn, when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll. Whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well. It is well with my soul. It's God that has to teach us that, isn't it? It's not going to come naturally. Are we teachable? Are we